Hi, I'm Albert and welcome to Allow Signal. This episode, I look at Pixel's QHD 165Hz monitor. Is it good? Is it bad? Who is it for? Let's find out. So let me dig into the features of this monitor. It has a large 32-inch screen with a 2K resolution of 2560 by 1440, which is pretty interesting because about 10 years ago, I was still using a 32-inch TV. But that's in the past, and now screens are getting bigger and bigger. This monitor uses AU Optronics AHVA IPS panel, which is also known as Fast IPS. As for the color coverage, this panel claims a full 100% sRGB and also 100% Adobe RGB color space. For those of you editing or printing graphics, this is actually pretty good for you. It's also rated for HDR400 and with a 165 Hz refresh rate and 1 milliseconds response time. The current price of the monitor is $599 from local retailers. So let me move on to who this monitor is intended for. So let me be clear. This monitor is really targeted at speed gamers training to get more headshots. It makes your enemy's head look as big as watermelons, and it's going to be pretty hard to miss. As for mixed gamers, this monitor really caters to those who love playing RPGs on a larger screen while not completely sacrificing speed. It definitely leans more towards a competitive edge monitor, and the comfortable viewing distance for this monitor is at about 96 cm, so maybe it's not for everyone. So let me move on to how I tested the monitor. Let's see what the review unit came with. Inside the box was, of course, the manual, a power brick, an adjustable stand, and a pair of cables. One of the cable is the USB port extension cable, and the other one is the DisplayPort cable. And together with the stand, the monitor weighs quite heavy. It's about 6.7 kg. While it's not the heaviest monitor out there, make sure you don't drop it while you're trying to assemble because that'll damage everything. So let us look at the stand more carefully. The stand build quality is pretty solid. It can angle up about 15 degrees, and if you angle it up all the way 15 degrees and you put the monitor at the edge of the table, you'll be able to flip it and do a full 90-degree tilt for vertical orientation. However, due to the large 32-inch screen, this will overhang the table by about 1 cm. And it can also swivel left and right about 60 degrees, making it very easy to show your screen to someone else. And the monitor can go as low as touching the base of the monitor stand at raising up to a maximum height of 11 cm from the base. The stand itself is very stable. Typing, there's no wobble, or gaming also there's no wobble. So next, I will look at the back of the monitor. So at the back of the monitor, it uses the standard Vesa mount 100 mm by 100 mm. It will fit all standard Vesa mount monitor arms. Just make sure the arm is rated to carry roughly 6 kg and more lah. It has two HDMI 2.0 ports and a display port 1.2, as well as a headphone jack and a USB 3.0 Type B port. So this will extend the three other USB Type A ports from the monitor. This is useful if you like to plug in USB devices to your monitor. And next, I will show you how I set it up for testing on my table. So at first, I tried replacing my primary monitor, but that wasn't ideal. I felt like it's a bit too close to my face. And second, I tried shifting it to the left monitor position, and it was a bit better. Then, like macam Goldilocks, I had to try a third time. So I shifted the monitor a bit further back to the recommended distance of at least 96 cm away. Now, next I will show you what I did for testing. Actually, before you ask me why I need to shift it 96 cm away, here's the chart with the most common screen sizes and resolution, and the recommended distance from the screen for maximum viewing comfort. And you will notice that this monitor, which is also actually known as the Pixel U32 Pro, is about 91 pixels per inch PPI, and the recommended distance for that PPI is about 96 cm away. So now that you know, let me move on to color and HDR. The monitor is rated for 100% sRGB and 100% Adobe RGB coverage. Out of the box, at the factory settings, I personally noticed a visible yellow tint to the screen, most likely due to the Adobe RGB coverage lah, and it covers more of the red and yellow spectrum. Then after manually calibrating it to my own preferences, it still retained a slight yellow tint, especially with HDR enabled. And at about 165 Hz, the monitor can only get a 8-bit plus FRC signal. So it's 8-bit with dithering. And because of the display port is only at 1.2, so it goes when you go below 144 Hz, this goes back up to a 10-bit signal on Windows 11. So overall, the icons look slightly less fuzzy at 144 Hz than 165 Hz when you enable HDR. And it has a HDR 400 rating, but I actually noticed that the peak brightness is actually at about 600 nits. So it's pretty good for its current position in the market. So let me move on to the specs that matter the most for gaming next. So the monitor's default refresh rate is 165 Hz, but it's overclockable to 170 Hz, and it comes with three overdrive modes: standard, which is enabled by default, advanced, and ultra fast. What I'm showing on the screen is the monitor set at 165 Hz with overdrive on advanced mode. This overdrive setting gave me the best performance with excellent clarity across multiple refresh rates. And it has the least artifacts such as ghosting, inverse ghosting, or double image. And now that you know what is the best overdrive mode to enable for the monitor, it's time to test the system latency. Here, I use CSGO to test the system latency. My test system uses a 5600X with 2 times 16 gigabytes of 3600 megahertz RAM and a 3080 GPU. I tested three monitors with three different refresh rates, one at 60 Hz, one at 144 Hz, and finally this monitor, which is 165 Hz, to see how the refresh rate reduces the game lag. Next, I'll go through the graphic settings I used. So for my graphic settings, I enabled G-Sync across all my displays, as well as low latency mode, I set it to ultra. I've also switched on G-Sync to fast. This means the game, if it's being rendered above the monitor refresh rate, it will actually continue to run unlocked. Only when it falls below the refresh rate, then it will lock it to VSync. So to record the system latency, I don't have NVIDIA's LDAC. Instead, I'm using Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra because that's the only slow-mo camera I have on hand. It has a super slow-mo feature to record 1 second of footage at 960 frames per second. So for each attempt, I will record 50 different results. For example, like 71 frames, 79 frames, and 75 frames. Then I'll average all the 50 results to which in this example is 75 frames. Then I will multiply it by the actual milliseconds, which is 1.04, and that will give you the average system latency of 78 milliseconds. So now you know my method. Let me move on to the actual control testing. So for the control, I'm using a 60 Hz 2 milliseconds monitor from Anmite. Average latency of about 56.67 frames, as you can see in the video I have in the background. And the actual latency, I multiply the number of frames by the actual milliseconds, 1.04, and I get about 58.93 milliseconds. This is after I compare it with NVIDIA Miplex website, what a 60 Hz monitor looks like. It looks like it falls within acceptable range lah. It's close to the Fortnite result. So now I move on to a 144 Hz monitor. This one I took a 144 Hz 1 millisecond monitor by Armaggeddon, and the average system latency I measured over 50 results is 25 frames. So I multiply that by 1.04 is roughly 26 milliseconds. And as you can see, this is basically about half of system latency of a 60 Hz monitor, which is actually quite comparable. It makes sense as well. Theoretically, 144 Hz divided by 2 is 72 Hz, which is close to 60 Hz lah. So you should get about half the latency, but because there's other things like your game and your mouse, so latency will be a bit higher than half. But this is a pretty good result. So now we move on to the actual monitors comparison, which is the 165 Hz 0.5 milliseconds advanced overdrive. And you can see in the video it's pretty fast. And I measured it, it's 12.6 frames after 50 results. And the actual latency is 13.1 milliseconds. This is actually roughly equivalent to a 360 Hz monitor, which I am a little bit skeptical. But since then I actually redid the test 2 more times, so basically 100 results after this, and I actually got the same average. So I can confirm that yes, this monitor system latency is actually pretty fantastic and a bit unbelievable. So to add to my results, I noticed recently Hardware Unboxed released a good video on how DLSS impacts input lag, and they use a 240 Hz monitor to show their results. Because I currently do not have any 240 or 360 Hz monitors I have on hand, I decided to include their results for a more comprehensive comparison. So they use a slightly different system to record. They actually have NVIDIA's LDAT, which is able to measure the specific monitor input lag. But you can see that their result of 11.9 milliseconds and 12.2 milliseconds very close to what this monitor that I just reviewed is able to do. Welcome to the TLDR and conclusion for the review of Pixel's U32 Pro, or better known as Pixel's 32-inch QHD 165 Hz monitor. The color accuracy and the HDR for this monitor is pretty good, but also at the same time it's also pretty basic. But that's not really the point, because it's not the main strength of this monitor. You buy this monitor to get an unfair advantage over those people using 27-inch 1440p 240 Hz monitor or 24-inch 360 Hz 1080p monitors, because this monitor is comparable in speed, but it's also bigger, so it makes it easier to get a headshot from further away. And it sounds quite unbelievable because this monitor can go toe to toe, with a 240 Hz or even a 360 Hz monitor. If I can get my hands on later a 390 Hz monitor, which I see being sold now, maybe I can make a more accurate comparison and to see if AU Optronics, their claim that this is a AHVA fast IPS, is it some truth behind the technology, or is it still like bullshit marketing? But if this unit, every unit is going to perform at this level, this could very well be a start of a legend, because at $599 it's basically half the price of most 240 Hz 1440p monitor, or even 360 Hz 1080p monitors. That means you have more money to buy a better PC, you get even more FPS. So for now, this definitely earns my top recommendation for competitive gaming esports monitor. And I'll see you again. Thank you for watching to the end of the video. And if you like this video, please subscribe to the channel. And for those of you interested in budget 4K monitors, you can check out episode 2 for my top 5 comparison. Or if you want to know more about how to choose a gaming monitor, including the comfortable viewing distance, check out episode 3, where I give some useful tips on selecting your gaming monitor. So thank you, and I will have another comparison for you soon. Bye bye. Oh, let me get a few more headshots before I return this monitor.